Write a program whose input is 2 integer. Output the first integer and subsequent increments of 5 as long as the value is less than or equal to the second integer. So you have to get a first integer, okay, and then you have to increment it 5 in the range of 5, okay. If the first number is 10 and the second number is 15, means 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and then 50. So this should be the output. So you have to get two numbers. The first bigger than the second number, then it should say that the second is lesser than the first, then second integer cannot be less than the first. Like that, it should give you the message. If it is in a correct format, if it is bigger, then it should print the subsequent number in the range of 5, incrementation of 5. Okay, so I'll run it so that you'll get some idea. For example, first number, maybe let me enter the first number, enter the second number. Okay, so when I run this, the first number is 10 and the second number is 50. Then it should just increment it to 5. Okay. In case if the first number is 50 and the second number is 10, then it should say the second integer cannot be less than the first integer. Okay. So think about that word. How can you do that? I'll close it. Let's think about the algorithm. Okay. Then I want you to solve it yourself. N1, first number, convert to integer, prompt the user to enter the first number. And then initiate N2. Enter the second number. And then if N2 is less than N1, then you cannot increment. So in that case, we have to give the error message saying that second number, second integer can't be less than the first. Else, okay, here is the deal. So for, right? For, we know I temporary variable in range function, stop and interval. Start is N1 and stop is N2 or N2 plus 1. We want to include that number as well, right? So it should be plus 1. If you want to include it, obviously it is plus 1, or else range will exclude that number. And then interval is 5, right? 5, 5 interval. What we want to print? Starting from the current number, right? Starting from N1, we want to print. So what we have to print? Print, convert it, or you can print it directly, but let's convert it to string and do the string concatenation. Let's print I. Let's see what happens. Let's just print I. 10, 50. Okay, it will just print it like this. But if you want to print it like in the same horizontally one after another, then you need to format it. Let's do the string concatenation. Comma space, end input. We have already discussed about this end input that will make it horizontal. Okay. So if you want to make the output horizontal, then use the end parameter inside print function. That will make the vertical display to horizontal display, skipping the next line. It will skip the next line simply because print will always include a new line. Since it is inside the loop, it will create new line for each output. So we are just skipping it by using end parameter. Write a program that takes in a line of text as an input, output that line of text in reverse. The program repeats, ending when the user enters done or D, whatever, these three input. Okay. So either they can give done or uppercase, lowercase, capitalized done or lowercase done or D. In any of under any of these three conditions, it should stop getting the input. Okay, whatever the input is, it should reverse the input like this. I'll show you. For example, I'm just printing hello, then it will just print it in reverse. It should print it in reverse. Okay, so this is the demo. Now let's discuss the algorithm. So input, where we are going to save input, enter the word that needs to get reversed. Okay, that is the input. And then while condition. So unless you give done in any form, it will keep on asking the next input. While input is done, and or the input is not equal to lowercase done, and the input is D. Output is, we're just creating some empty string, an empty variable to hold the output. For I in range length of input -1. So it will start from the last indexing. And then keep going backwards. And then it will go until -1. It will exclude -1. So what is before -1? 0. Okay. So what is there in the 0? First index, first value, that is H. Does it make sense? Right? -1 will exclude, range function will exclude -1. So it will include until 0. Output, empty string, it will get appended in with each loop. With each iteration, it will keep on adding a particular character from the string. Okay, which is there in I. Which is there in I. Hello. Then okay, we have given the loop, right? So okay, it will, when you get the next input, then it will be ready to get the next input. Okay. Then instead of printing it again, if you give done, then it will keep on it will stop asking it. If you give done, then it will stop asking it. Write a program to calculate the BMI and create two functions that are described below. The program calls the function in order to calculate BMI and get the category, and then display the output as shown below. The program should take only take numeric input. Okay. So you also have to write the program that it should take pair of height and weight. In case if it doesn't, it just gets the height, weight is not provided, then it should give you the error message. So we have to do two type check. One is whether all the input are integers, that we have to check. And then always it should be pair of number. Height and weight. If the user gives only one value, then it should give us the error message that it can. What is the error message? The error message should be wrong number of arguments provided. Like that, it should give you the error message. Okay, we have to give, so you can just check the output. It should be like this. If you give, always give even number of inputs. If you give odd number of inputs, then it should say wrong number of arguments provided. Open Visual Studio Code. Open Visual Studio Code. Create a Python file. So for this, I want you to refer lab course 7. Lab course 7. We have already done that. So you don't need to start it from scratch. You can just reuse the code. If you go to lab 4, problem number 7, we are just going to, so we have done the same thing, except only one thing. We didn't do it in command line prompt. So we have to convert the code so that we're going to do it in command line prompt. And then also we have to check it always gets even number of inputs. If it gets the high number of input, then it should say that wrong number of arguments provided. So these are the two changes that we are going to make to this problem, so that that is the solution of problem number 11. Okay. So feel free to copy this code from course 7, lab 4, problem number 7. Copy that code and paste it in Visual Studio Code. Okay. And then first thing to do this in command line prompt, what do you have to do? You have to import system package. We call in command line prompt, you have to import system package. That is the first change that we are doing. We can keep the this definition and this definition as it is. No changes. Okay. And then here we are going to keep track of number of arguments, right? How many arguments? 6. Okay. If you give 7 number, then only height, weight is not provided, right? So only it should get even number of inputs. If it gets odd number, then you have to say wrong number of arguments. So how can we keep track of that? Which function will keep track of that number of inputs? Which function will do that? Good. So we are going to use the length function to keep track of number of arguments, number of inputs. Okay. So this is nothing but system dot argument. Whatever, how many inputs that is provided, that will be saved here in system package argument. Sys.argv. Does it make sense? Yeah. So now we are going to keep track of number of argument, the even number of argument, which will deal with that even number, odd number. You have done it. Even number. To find whether the given number is even number, we will simply do modulus 2. What should be the modulus 2 value to have the even number of inputs? Modulus 2 should be 0, right? So can we use that technique here? Yes, we can do that. So if always it will give you but the indexing starts from 0. Okay. So to considering that, modulus 2 equal to 0. In this case, we are going to do looping, right? If not, let's keep it as it is. If not, if this is true, then we are doing this for loop. Or else, what we have to say? Yes. Error message. What is the error message? Wrong number of argument provided. Wrong number of arguments provided. Okay. Okay, here we are going to convert it as a for loop, right? For I in range length -1. I hope you can understand this. The range function, if you give length, then it will not consider the 0 index. Since it is 0 indexing, we are just giving length -1. If the current value, whatever the current value, this is, we are just taking 2 by 2. This one, if you give 7, anyway, it is going to process 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, right? So for the current length, I modulus 2, again modulus 2, not equal to 0. Okay, when it is not equal to 0, then try. So this is how this try will come. One tab, okay, here. Tab, 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 tab. Okay. Here notice input. We are just getting it from the system. So if you recall how that works, float system dot argument variable I, 0 indexing, and the next value, whatever you are entering, will be I plus 1. Okay. In case, if this modulus 2 value is not equal to 0, then it means there is only one value in that path. When that is the case, we'll give the error message inside the exit. What is the error message? Oh, sorry. That has been handled by here, this one. And this, what it will do, this takes care of whether the value is floating point or not. Okay, floating point or not, or integer, numeric or not. This try takes care of, just looks for whether the input is numeric or not. If there is an error, then it will say this program only takes the numeric input. So it just should come out of the loop. Okay. Once it finds out the even number of odd number of the input, then it should come out of the loop. Which one will do that? Break, right? So it will just break because it does not have even number of like it does not have the numeric input. Or else it should keep working on calculating the EMI. Okay, so the same else part what you see here, you can just copy and paste it here. Calling the category. Okay, so here we are not using two try, we are just using one try. This is how we are verifying whether the input is numeric or not. And we are verifying, we are filtering out whether even number of input or not, that we are filtering it by using if loop. Okay, if it doesn't have the even number of input, then immediately it will come out of the loop, come out of the full code and say wrong number of arguments provided. So this filtering has been done by this if and else. This condition is satisfied, only it gets into this. And the second filtering is, it just check whether all the input is numeric. Okay, I hope it will work. Let's save. You open the command line prompt. I will run in command line prompt, recall Python and then go to the folder and just drag the value. Let's give this value. Okay, I'm just copying that sample output from the command from the lab manual. Okay, that seems like there is some error. Get category DMR. Okay, it reformatted that. So always that should be the tab with the if else, right? So save. Run it again. It just gives you the value. Let's try the second one with one number less. I'm going to try the same value, but I'm just going to take away that 170. So 65 height, 120 weight, 70 height, 275 weight, and then 70 height, weight is not provided. So in that case, it just gives wrong number of arguments provided. Okay. So for this program, I can say it's kind of little bit complicated. So you have to think through. Okay. Even the next problem is also going to be command line prompt input that will make you to think. Yep. Yeah, this one return statement. So when I copied and pasted, the intent is that it went back. The indentation was wrong when I copied. Okay. Your importing system to get the system package to get the input. These two definition we have already done it the last lab. Okay, so calculating BMI, the definition of that, getting category, the code for that. I don't need to explain. You're already familiar with this. So this one we are using length function to find out number of argument because we have to value that we have to just validate that value. Always it should be an even number of input. To validate it, we are just using this. Okay, so if it is 7 value, if you have given 7, then the last index value will be, if the length of the input is 7, the last index value is 6. Okay, so when the last index is 6, that means there is 7 value, odd number of input. So when there is odd number of input, then you have to give wrong number of input. That is not the case. When you're verifying that it is only even number of input, then you're entering into the inputs and validating whether all of them are numeric input. If not, you're just giving the error message, or else you're just calling these two functions and calculating the height and weight and finding out the category. Person. So last problem, write a program that calculates some basic statistics from set of sales using a function called calculate stats that takes number of sales, loop through the sales, calculate the statistics and print the result. The program should give an error message for non-numeric input. The output should be below. It can get any number of input. For the given input, it has to find minimum, maximum, range, average. Okay. So for that, I recommend you to use 5.2. I think 5.2. We take lab 5.2. Problem number 2 here. You can reuse this. You can reuse this because here you can see we have done the same thing. Getting any number of input, finding out maximum and minimum. In addition to that, here we are going to find out average, and then range, average and range. We are going to find 2 more. Okay. So, but we have some basic code. You can just copy and paste this code. And then we can modify it. According to this problem. Okay. So open a new file in Python. This 12th problem. So just paste that. This command line input. You have to use system package. They asked us to do it as a function, right? They asked us to create a function, calculate stats, create a function called calculate states, CAL states. So let's create a function. Definite CAL states and length. Okay, so input is how many values we are getting from the command line prompt input, that much. So parameter is length. Okay, so let's initialize variables. Sum is there, min, max, average. We can initialize all of them. Let's keep all of them. to deal with this. We're not going to give done. When you simply press enter, that will do the job. So we're just going to modify this little bit. Okay. So this doesn't work. While input count, none of these things will work because we are not going to do it in that way. So in that case, we don't want these variables. We don't want these variables. We are going to do it by starting from 1 to the length minus 1. Or if you just do length, then you have to do length minus 1. If you are fixing your starting index to be 1, then you can simply say length. If you don't specify your starting index, by default, the starting index will be 0. Okay, here I'm just specifying the starting index should be 1. So that will make it length. Yes. Putting the package, and then we have to define a function. So I'm just modifying the previous code that will match this. So here we don't need any of these things. But we need this try thing because we are going to verify whether the input is integer, right? We need that. But this one is not input. It is system argument, right? So, how do you say? System dot argument v of I. So if it is integer, then we are processing it. If it is not, what you have to do? Error message. What is the error message? All the inputs should be numeric, right? Print all the inputs should be numeric. And then it will ask for the next one. So let's say return. So here in else part, we are going to do all this calculation. Here we are not going to count anything. First, let's do the max and min. So if max v, we are initially setting it as none. So for this one should be okay. We can even keep it as it is. We can just keep it as it is. It will just give you the value. Let's do the range one. What is the range one? Max v minus minimum v. Maximum value minus minimum value will give you the range value. So max v minus min v. Sum equal to with each loop, it will just add the value. We have already done it before, something like this. Average equal to the sum value divided by, we have been keeping track of this L value. One, two, three, four, five. Should be fine. Then print minimum equal to, that will be there in min V max. Did you see even in the Visual Studio Code, it will give you the documentation. By default, it will give you the documentation even in Visual Studio Code. Max V. Range. Range variable. Finally, average will be saved in average. And they want to do the round of average. If you read the documentation, round the average to 2 decimal point. How can we do that? Round function, average is the first parameter, and how much decimal? That should be the second parameter. Yeah, one more parenthesis. Thank you. Yeah, range V, not range. Yeah. Okay, so now we have to do the function calling ones, right? So length is going to be nothing but the length of system dot argument V. And then we're going to calculate this calling, this function calling. Call stats, whatever is that will be passed here. Okay, did we miss anything? Okay. Save. First, let's check. I should not give the sum here because since I have given it as a global way. Okay, let me check it and then. Python. Python. Take the values 200, 400. Yeah. Seems like this is not needed and this is not needed. The default, it does not take the it just takes. It's because it just need the indentation for all the definition. Since it is in the this level, it needs an indentation. So indentation issue. Tab, 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 tab. In that case, everything should be tab. Tab. Every tab should be moved. Yeah, because the definition that needs the indentation, right? I missed the indentation here. Inside the definition, whatever you have to do. That's what it says, indentation problem. Tab. Okay, then print should work with this level inside the for loop. Calculate should be the same level. Okay, and then I forgot to delete this. Save. Stat is not defined. Is there any typo error? Called stat. So sorry. There is no C. Range. Line number 12. Local variable range reference. So yeah, so that may create the problem. Okay. So